Welcome to this afternoon's incredible session on inclusive law firm marketing. Today, you're going to be walking away with some insightful information. Today, you're going to be, when you understand your desired clientele, you're better equipped to serve them, understand them, listen and hear them, and really empathize and connect with them. My name is Katie Colazar, and I'm the Director of People Business Partnerships at Clio. I have the honor today to introduce you to the absolute powerhouse, Rookie Tajani. Rookie is a trademark attorney and the founder and chief Esquire officer of Firm for the Culture. Rookie founded Firm for the Culture because intellectual property is a civil right. Firm for the Culture offers comprehensive trademark, education, strategy, and application services for a host of social entrepreneurs and innovative founders. As a social entrepreneur herself, Rookie knows what it's like to seek social change while learning to protect a business's assets. Rookie is the founder and creator of the First Generation Purpose Project, an initiative designed to help first-generation professionals and entrepreneurs navigate life and their careers. This incredible woman seeks social change and is a fearless advocate for diversity. This is what powers Firm for the Culture, and this is what drives her connection to her clients. Rookie has her story, and today she's going to educate you on how stories matter and in identifying and marketing to your ideal candidate. Please welcome Rookie to the stage.
Good luck. Thank you. First of all, didn't Katie do a great job? Thank you so much, Katie. Go ahead and give her a clap. Hello, everyone. Now, I grew up in a Black church, so we do call and response now. Hello, everyone. Hello. Yes, I love this. First of all, I'm so privileged and honored to be here. I was at ClioCon just a few years ago in 2019, and I had an opportunity to see so many dynamic speakers. Does anyone remember in 2019 seeing Daniel Pink? Was anyone here who saw Daniel Pink? And the reason why I say that is because ClioCon has a dynamic reputation for having dynamic speakers. You had Daniel Pink in 2019, where he talked about the frustration of using many hours of working but not feeling productive. So he talked about being intentional with your time and your schedule for the sake of your team and your law firm. And then you had Seth Godin the next year, where he talked about marketing, and he talked about utilizing community advocacy and community building, not only to build a group of people who could potentially be your clients, but a group of people who feel like they mattered. And then we can't forget about Jack Newton, the CEO of Clio and the chief Esquire officer of a huge movement in technology and law. He talked about the client-centered approach to the legal field. And he talked about two, up until then, seemingly irreconcilable ideas: having a client-centered law firm and running an efficient and profitable business. And what he said was, these ideas are not only ones that come together, but they're integral to having a space of belonging, of social impact, and of sustainable profit. So these are pretty hard acts to follow. But as I was practicing and studying and engaging my preparation for this talk, I tried to look at common factors amongst each of these dynamic speakers. And the thing that I found over and over and over again was around inclusive stories. Like I said, Daniel Pink, he brought us into the conversation when he talked about the frustrations that a lot of lawyers can have when spending dozens of hours per week on matters, but not feeling as productive. And then you had Seth Godin, again, when he talked about the importance of going into your local community and really reaching out to the stakeholders there. So when they see you, they not only see a lawyer, but they see a leader. And then you have Jack Newton, who talks constantly, even in the midst of COVID. I had the opportunity to see him at the ClioCon last year. He talked about how technology can be used not only to serve more clients, but to advance social justice and belonging. So stories matter. And what we're gonna do in this time together is really go through a couple of stories. In particular, we're gonna do three things. One, we're gonna talk about why inclusive stories matter and the inclusive story framework that I crafted. Two, we're gonna put that framework into place. We're gonna break down some stories, many of which my team and I have come up with that have resonated with audiences and have gotten us really, really dynamic clients. We're gonna break those things down against the backdrop of the inclusive stories framework. And then we're gonna build them back up. And I'm gonna ask for your participation. So get ready, don't fall asleep quite yet. Get your coffee on. And then three, we're gonna give you tools and we're gonna discuss the things that may be helpful to help you craft your own inclusive story. So with that, let's get started. So I wanna talk about the inclusive stories framework with nothing else but a story. So I am a first generation everything. From the projects to Brooklyn, New York. And one of the things that my mom, a Nigerian woman, loved doing was inviting people over to our house, particularly after church, to feed them everything that you could possibly think of in our fridge. And one of the things that she would oftentimes do at the church is, people are singing and worship and praise, and she's like, are you hungry now? You need to come to I will feed you. And it's like, okay, great, awesome. So the first thing that she oftentimes did was invite people to the table. And in her own genuine way, she would invite people into the table. She would invite people into the house. And I'm asking you in order to be inclusive, invite people to the story. Oftentimes you can do that with the one-liner that brings people into the conversation. And we'll talk about that in a few story examples shortly. Now, the next one was share the story build up as the audience settles in. Now, you are not immediately going to bring them into your house and then immediately just shove food in their face. You're gonna sit them down. You're gonna give them a tour. You're gonna talk to them about, if you're in the case of my mom, you're gonna talk to her. You're gonna talk to the audience or talk to the people about why I'm still not married yet. Why she was very excited that I decided to be a lawyer and not an artist. There's actually a joke. I remember when I was younger, I told my mom, hey, Mom, I want to draw. She was like, you want to be an artist. What will you draw? How will you eat? And it's like, okay, well, guess we're not doing that. Bring the person into the story. Share with them relatively benign facts. Share with them relatively cool details to bring the story into what you'll see as the relatable enemy of lack and loss. And that's because every story, every good story has that. It's something that we can all relate to in the human experience. Whether it's losing your friend during COVID, losing a couple of people that you care about as you ascended in your law firm trajectory, or even losing the sense of normalcy as you continue to go day to day in this new era of work that we're living in. So oftentimes, when it came to my mom, we would bring people into the house, my mom would give them a tour, and then suddenly they would start hearing their stomach growling because my mom is still talking to them and not actually feeding them. So what they're scared of is the lack of having this satiated hunger. So you want to make sure that you are bringing the people in and talking to them about what they stand to lose if they don't follow you. And then you want to guide them from loss to abundance. You finally give them the food. You finally give them the very thing that they need. And that's what my mom did. She would give this whole plate of stew. And as we would eat ferociously, She would then stand by and smile unapologetically, knowing that suddenly our happiness was attributed to her. So why is it that we have this inclusive story framework, and why did I put it like this? Well, according to the Harvard Business Review, storytelling, one of the most universal human experiences, gives us a rare chance to look through new lenses, specifically through the lenses of others, in the understanding that they see us. And what this 2021 article shared is that particularly in this time, in the time of the Great Resignation, the death of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, discrimination against Asian Americans, discrimination against the Jewish community, people are not just looking for win rates and statistics about diversity. They're looking for anecdotal evidence that if they were to give you their story, and in this case, their court case and their legal issues, you're not going to come in a place of judgment, and you're going to make them feel like they belong. So the first story that we're going to unpack is my story. And we all have a story, of course, so here's a little bit about mine. Like I shared earlier, I'm a proud first-generation college graduate, proud first-generation law school graduate from the projects of Brooklyn, New York. And after years of being an attorney, after years of succeeding, I went to UC Berkeley School of Law, I did a federal clerkship, I worked at all of these top law firms. I wanted to quit. I wanted to leave the legal field as we knew it. Because as the first in my family, I didn't know what I didn't know about navigating this space effectively. And that, just frankly, along with the abysmal lack of diversity, I was rarely in rooms that looked as beautiful and diverse as this. That made me want to quit. But mentors and friends, and frankly, some divine intervention convinced me not to quit. So I went on and joined the #1 litigation firm in the country, Quinn Emanuel, Ukert & Sullivan, as an intellectual property attorney in the Silicon Valley. And I loved it. I loved engaging trademarks, copyrights, patents, trade secrets. You name it, I did it. I loved having meetings with the darlings of the Silicon Valley and venture capitalists. But even despite that, even despite being in these rooms, that perpetual tugging of the realization that I was the only one there who looked like me. And I wanted to help more people whose intellectual property too was legitimate, even if it didn't look like Facebook, Instagram, Pandora, or Spotify. So I decided to take a leap, and I started Firm for the Culture, which is an innovative virtual law firm designed to help social entrepreneurs trademark their brand, monetize their brand, and scale their social impact. Firm for the Culture serves as my love letter to diverse creatives, and to case law, and to creativity. It's my ability to allow our troublemakers and change makers and rule breakers to make their mark on the world. So that's my story. That's the first one. So let's break that down. So this is where I'm going to ask for audience participation. In this story, and I'd love to hear from you, what, if anything, was the part of the story that you felt invited you to the table, that you felt invited you in?
Hi, Ricky. My name is Patricia DeFonte, and I am with Estate Planning with Hart, a law firm in California. I wrote down what you said. You don't know what you don't know about navigating X efficiently. I think that resonates with a lot of lawyers. Mm-hmm. A lot of us who are not the traditional law student graduating from law school at 25 years old. We're not the right gender, we're not the right color, we're not the right orientation, we're not the right thing. It is remarkable and a privilege to not have to be someone else's avatar and to go out and create something and talk about what you do in a way that helps your clients navigate all the things that they don't know how to navigate. Mm-hmm. So it's beyond you navigating this. It's now you are creating that path to allow other people to navigate what feels like treacherous waters because people don't understand their rights. Yep. They don't understand what the options are, and they don't understand where the potholes are. So thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Thank you for sharing yours, and thank you for receiving it. So yeah, as many of you alluded, much of what I intended to use to bring in the audience was the first line. We all have a story. We all have a story, from you crafting your own story to you understanding how to navigate the legal field or not and still learning that. We all have a story. So the first line that I shared was, we all have a story, here's a little bit about mine. And then we share the story build up as we settle in. Relatively innocuous details. Well, I wouldn't say innocuous, but it's not the big thing, as in I wanted to quit. I'm a proud first-generation law school graduate, proud first-generation college graduate. And then we share the relatable enemy of lack and loss. There is a point where many of us, even if we don't necessarily want to admit it, whether in the legal fields or beyond, we want to quit. We want to quit a particular client. We want to quit a particular case. We may want to quit from a particular relationship. So that is the relatable enemy of lack and loss. And then we guide them to abundance. Oftentimes, what allows us to stay grounded in the purpose that we're walking in is our community. And for me, that was mentors and friends and divine intervention. And then we demonstrate that the abundance is attributed to your solution. So despite all of the mentors and the friends and divine intervention, no amount of them could eventually convince me to stay unless I made a decision, right? So much of what allowed me to move forward and to pivot even into Firm for the Culture was my decision. So hopefully this is giving you a little bit of an understanding of how you can craft your story to bring people into it and to help them understand that much of the solution and the abundance that they can get can be attributed unapologetically to you, your decision, and your law firm. Any questions before I go on? All right, so now we're gonna go to the second story. So the second story is a little bit more fun. So let me know if you recognize this sound. All right, y'all need to recognize the sound though. 20th Century Fox, one of the most prolific movie studios in the country. Okay, so I'm gonna start a sentence and you finish it off. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Yes, I'm loving this. Believe it or not, these are federally registered trademarks. And what is a trademark, you're wondering? And what does it have to do with storytelling and social impact? Well, a trademark is a form of intellectual property. A brain baby, as I like to call it, a manifestation of the mind in a way that's tangible, concrete, and monetizable. A trademark can be a word, a symbol, a sound, or a catchphrase that differentiates one business from another. With trademarks, you can allow two companies to sell the same thing to the same people at the same time in the same area, as long as their stories are different, as long as the businesses are different. Trademarks allow distinct stories to matter. Okay, how about this one? Raise your hands if you recognize the name Black Lives Matter. This, unfortunately, is not a federally registered trademark. And the lessons gleaned from this will hopefully not only show you why I left corporate America to start Firm for the Culture, but it'll also show you the importance of developing your brand, not only for the now, but for the future. In 2013, Black Lives Matter was officially launched by Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi. And Black Lives Matter has been on the national and international stage ever since then. It was there in 2014 with Eric Garner. It was there in 2016 with Sandra Bland. It was even there during one of the most controversial elections in recent history, the one between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. But despite all of that, Patrisse, Alicia, and Opal did not take the steps to trademark or federally protect their brand name until it was too late. About 4 years later, they went to the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and in an attempt to protect their name, to stop others from utilizing it in a way that was not in alignment with their values, their mission, and their vision, they were not only refused, but their brand was rejected. On this relatively recent refusal called the failure to function refusal, And what that essentially means is that because everyone was able to use it without regard to how it was used or if it was used correctly, no one person can own it. And that included the founders of Black Lives Matter. That's the risk of not protecting your brand. Now, fast forward to 2020. COVID happens. Deaths surge. Civil satisfaction plummets. And there's so much societal dissatisfaction in the death of George Floyd and the recording of that death going viral. Support in the Black Lives Matter movement resurges in the millions of dollars. Now, unfortunately, the organization that Patrice, Alicia, and Opal started didn't get much of that benefit. In fact, over $4.4 million was misdirected to the wrong Black Lives Matter organization. In fact, it was a rogue organization I'm saying generously. In fact, it was a GoFundMe page founded by a man who had a P.O. box in Santa Clarita, California. And because of that, much of the funds that could have been used to initiate and promote justice didn't go there. That is the risk of not stewarding your story. Now, we can all speculate as to what would have happened if someone told Patrice, Alicia, and Opal about the importance of protecting their brand. And maybe they did. We would never know. But hindsight is 2020. And instead of looking back, let's look forward with purpose. Firm for the Culture is the way that I move forward with purpose. At Firm for the Culture, we believe that your stories matter, that your diverse contributions to the culture matters. So in closing, I say this: protect your story. Develop your story. Share your story. Because who knows? Your story may be the very thing that serves as a catalyst that starts a movement that changes the world 10 times over. Thank you. So that's story number 2. All right, y'all. We're going back to the workshop. What is the thing that brought you in? Anyone? What is the thing that invited you to the table? You over here.
I'm James.
Hi, James.
Hello.
Go ahead and clap for James. I volunteered him.
I'm James.
Where are you from, James?
From Dallas, Texas.
Dallas, Texas.
Yes,
Woo-hoo.
I think what brought me in overall was being a trademark attorney myself.
Well, yes.
Getting into the story of why it's important to tell your story, and I could see where you were going from the very beginning, that two companies can have a different story in the same market.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And how does that show up in the work that you do for your clients?
Because we're a branding law firm. So everything we do is taking your story and spreading your story around, developing it and strengthening it.
Exactly. Thank you so much, James. Thank you. Give him a round of applause. Who else? Someone over in this section. I'd love to hear from you guys. Shinwe. Yep, I know your name. Don't play with me. Don't introduce yourself to me before conferences now.
Is this what I get for sitting here? I think that the thing that drew me in initially was, ironically, the sounds, right? It's an equalizer. Everybody could relate to those sounds. If you've gone to the movies, if you've watched a commercial, right? They're instantly recognizable, which is why when you now dovetail over to the storytelling, it makes sense.
Exactly.
'Cause at the end of the day, a trademark, like you've said, it's almost like a shorthand for a story, right? So I thought that was a great way to intro into the rest of that.
And the
piece.
powerful thing, just going off of what Chinwe said, the powerful thing about stories is that it oftentimes can take a convoluted and sometimes esoteric subject matter and turn it into something relatable and thereby understood. How many people understood like trademarks in its essence before I talked about McDonald's? Right? Okay, we got one person. But as far as I can tell, I didn't really understand and really get deep into the story of what trademarks were until I saw someone who looked like me have their intellectual property stolen. And I realized that you don't have to be Facebook or Instagram or Spotify to have a diverse contribution to the culture that matters. So we get to have stories that tell people that they too are a part of the conversation, even if they're not the bajillionaires, right? So we're gonna go to the last story. And this is a story that hopefully everyone can relate to. Now, the third story is a client story. So sometimes a client just wants to quit. For many clients, we at Firm for the Culture were the first team of attorneys that they've ever interacted with. And because of this, our clients are often very hesitant to share the goings-on of their lives, particularly because they don't think we care. I had one such client like this. Let's call her Stacy, not her real name. Stacy came to us with the desire to protect her brand for her unique and cultural branded new skincare line for Latinx and Black community members. From the time we started working together, Stacy was curious and charismatic. She was so charming. It was a joy to discuss the nuances of intellectual property with her, and diversity and importance of her brand, and the dynamic impact that she stood to make with her skincare line. I knew we were gonna get to the finish line. I just knew it, until Stacy went from charismatic to cautious. In the middle of what would become a 2-year-long intellectual property journey, my update emails to Stacy went unanswered. How many people experience that with their clients? They went unanswered. Our client calls would appear lackluster, and there was a sulliness in her voice that I could not pinpoint. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I had to get to the bottom of this if we were going to be successful together. So after a week, after our last discussion, I called Stacy and offered to simply talk with her. Can anyone guess the first question that she asked? Yes. How much is this going to cost? Perfect. What's your name? Tiffany, exactly. How much is this going to cost? And I said to her, nothing. I just want to see how you're doing. And at that moment, she opened up. And what she essentially said is that COVID overwhelmed her. She had lost several family members, which made the seemingly simple task of getting out of bed almost insurmountable. Being able to even open the door to her shop felt like she was moving mountains. She cried. I listened. I asked her if I could pray for her, knowing that we shared the same faith. She said yes. So I prayed. And at that moment, she started to open up a little bit more. Now, in the interest of time, I can't share too much, but what I will say is that we got Stacy's trademark. Stacy ended up healing. She ended up opening up her shop after the COVID shutdowns, and she ended up selling her premium luxury skincare line to the communities that mattered to her. Now, many of you can relate to this story, either because you're Stacy or you're Stacy's attorney. There's something dynamically powerful about being able to just center in on the human story and the human condition, notwithstanding the billable hour in the background. So sometimes it's time to care about people like Stacy. Thank you. So that's the third and the last story. What brought you in? What brought you into the story? Anyone? Yes, please. And tell us your name. Yes, get that microphone.
My name's Andrew Rutter. I'm from Toronto, Canada. So what brought me was when you said my client just wants to quit.
Yeah.
That really resonated with me. I'm a lawyer. I specialize in catastrophic impairment law. So my clients suffer the most severe injuries, loss of vision, paraplegic, neurological deficits, etc. And they don't know whether or not they'll ever be able to work again. They don't know if they'll be able to engage in their, things that we take for granted, engage in their activities of daily living. And I know when they lose that hope.
Yeah.
And I know when clients, want you to actually listen and to actually care about them. When they have to face, in my case, insurance companies with resources, they don't know how, the legal system works. They really stick their hand out to you and want you to help them in every way you can. And it's amazing how you switched into, a simple phone call to find out how they're doing. It goes such a long way. It really shows them that that you actually care a lot about them.
Absolutely.
But that's what really drew me in, because I experience that all the time whenever I meet a new client. It's that loss of hope, and I'm always trying to rekindle that flame in their life. So yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Give him a round of applause. Yeah. Knowing who my audience was, which is very important for marketing, I knew that the first line would resonate with many of you. Sometimes a client just wants to quit because oftentimes they don't see the bigger vision, they don't see the bigger picture because they're not equipped with the expertise to do so. So it is our job to oftentimes allow them to mourn, to have sadness, to be mad, but to remind them to keep on going. And then I wanted to share the story build up as we settle in. I didn't want to start off with, Stacey hates me. That would have been real awkward because she doesn't. So I wanted to start off with something that is pretty common amongst all of us. We're typically the first attorney that our clients work with. And one such client was somebody like Stacey. Who has or has had a client like Stacey? Raise your hand. Exactly. And then we share the relatable enemy of lack and loss. Now, I can't say whether many of your clients have lost loved ones to COVID, but we've all lost something at one point or another in our lives. I think all of us can agree that we've lost a sense of normalcy, of going out, of knowing whether to wear a mask or not in certain areas. So that's something that we all can relate to in some meaningful way or another. And then we guide them to abundance. And the abundance doesn't always have to look traditional. Stacey didn't ask me to file another trademark for her. She didn't ask me to pay some legal fees. And she didn't even ask me anything, frankly. It was the decision to be discerning that helped bring the client to the finish line. And then ultimately we got her trademark and we got her on the path. Now, I'm not gonna say that I was the entirety of the solution, but I think a lot of us, we need to start admitting to ourselves that we make a bigger impact than what we anticipate, right? So that is it for my stories. And I wanna we have about 5 more minutes, so that's a little bit more time than I anticipated. So I'd love to spend a little bit of time with you crafting your stories. So take out a piece of paper. This wasn't gonna be workshop style, but we got a few more minutes. Take out a piece of paper, and I'd love for you to start crafting your stories. And I'm gonna walk around like a teacher, asking you what your stories are. All right, so we'll do that for 5 minutes. Can we do that? All right. We have a few minutes left, but I did want to give anyone an opportunity to share even one part of their story. Either it was the first line, the fear of loss and lack, or guiding the client or guiding the audience to abundance. Does anyone want to share? Yes. Pass him the mic. Coming all the way from Atlanta.
You said you want me on stage? Okay, fine. I'm really shy, you guys.
Give him a round of applause. Oh, give him a round of applause.
So, as you know, law school teaches you how to practice law,
Sure does, maybe.
but not run a business.
You right about that.
And as you know, this leads many attorneys to struggle with IOLTA and trust account compliance. Many of you understand what I mean, right? And most recently, I helped a client who was selected for a random audit, believe it or not.
Wow.
Practiced over 10 years with no bookkeeping, no financial records. So you can imagine the burden that she felt, knowing that she had 10 days to get her stuff together. Otherwise,
How many days?
10.
10.
10.
9 plus 1.
Now, most people would have ran, but I didn't. I knew that I would be there for her. Now, in addition to the audit, she lost 5 family members during COVID.
Wow.
So there was a very heavy burden on her shoulders. I gave her my cell phone number, which I don't normally do, but I know that she needed some consoling during this period, this rough patch. And over the next 10 days, my team and I were able to get a whole year of bookkeeping done for her and get her financial packet ready for the Bar Association. So now she can rest assured that she won't be losing her license due to not having the correct record keeping.
Give him a round of applause, y'all. Now that was amazing, because if you know about IOLTA, he spoke a word. So I wanted to say thank you so much, and I want to leave you with a couple more tips about how to craft your story. So again, the inclusive story framework, invite the audience to the table, share the story build up as they settle in, share the relatable enemy of lack and loss, guide them to abundance, and demonstrate the positive outcome. Make it unapologetically about something that you did, something that you decided, because we get to stand in that. We get to stand in the impact that we're making for our clients. So here are some really easy ways to curate your story. Sign up for Google Alerts in your practice area. The way I found out about Black Lives Matter was through a Google alert. It intrigued me. I read about it further. I did a little bit of a deep dive, and that's how I crafted my story. Carry a notebook to jot quick insights. Stories can come from anywhere. It can come from you walking down the street, going to the mall, getting ice cream. So really, carry something with you so you can write them down. So by the time you sit down to craft your story, you're not writing from a clean slate or trying to craft something out of whole cloth. And then ask your clients to share their story. Create a safe space for them. Ask them how they're doing. If you're billable, maybe make the first 10 minutes or 12 minutes of your conversation non-billable just to say, hey, I just want to talk with you. How are you? Okay? Because inclusive marketing is effective marketing. Thank you. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn.
Now? Okay, perfect. We have a few minutes for questions from the audience. So if you want to raise your hand, I'll come with you to your microphone.
Hi, Rookie. It's Merlin. I'm from New York, entertainment and business lawyer, virtual law firm coach. I related a lot to your experience being first generation, everything, child of immigrants, first person to go to law school. How do you use that experience to relate to your clients? Or just in general, any type of experience you had in your past to help you relate to your client? Relate? Yes.
So when I first started Firm for the Culture, one of the things that I did was create a really powerful client avatar, which broke down from everything to what Instagram channels do they follow, what do they read, what do they like to do on their free time. And one of the things that I realized is that much of the ideal client avatar is how I show up. So I think it's just relatively, I wouldn't say simple, because I think sometimes as lawyers we tend to overthink. But when there is something that comes up in terms of commonality in the conversation, I really try to point it out and say, that's amazing, tell me a little bit more about that. I'll tell you a little story. This morning, I was doing what my coach likes to say, like gas calls, like they stand for give us calls, where you reach out to a couple of people in hopes of making them your potential client or making them your client. And there was one person who had picked up the phone and he said, well, I'm a little busy right now. I'd love to talk with you a little later. And I said, well, I hope that you're okay. And he said, yeah, I'm just helping a couple of people in the hospital. And I said, tell me a little bit more about that. And he said, well, I help a lot of autistic children. Now, unbeknownst to many people, I actually grew up as a middle child of two individuals with Down syndrome. My older brother, who had passed away when I was 15, had Down syndrome. My younger brother has Down syndrome and autism. Now, instead of just like gleaning over that fact in this story with the person, I said, thank you for what you do. The only reason why my brother has a life worth living is because of people like you. And that became a really vulnerable moment. And then after that, I said, it would be an honor to help you protect your intellectual property. So I think it's moments like that where you have an opportunity to simply show up authentically. That's where the real connection matters, or that's when the real connection is made. So hopefully that answers your question. Yes.
So we know each other, and you know that I love being a walking, living, breathing avatar for my brand. But I want you to talk about it, because I don't think, maybe not everyone has noticed that that's a picture of you with the sunglasses. Is that what a lawyer is supposed to look like, Ricky? Do we look like lawyers? Can you talk about how
These are actually
being a
some of my
walking, talking
clients.
brand is part of inclusive marketing?
Yeah, so I started I Am What a Lawyer Looks Like, I think it was during my federal clerkship, because I was the only person in the courthouse who looked like me. And that was around the time that I actually wanted to quit. So one of the words of affirmation that I kept on showing to myself is, I am what a lawyer looks like. And I would make that a hashtag on LinkedIn, and it started to just become my mantra. And as a result, I started looking at, okay, these are what clients look like. These are, with their permission, pictures of my clients, with the exception of, I think, about 2 of the pictures. And because of that, I've gotten more confident to show up to workshops in fedora hats, show up to bar events in like a green dress, because that doesn't take away, and I'm gonna get real Brooklyn, that doesn't take away from my receipts, child. Like, I'm still barred in California and New York. I still went to a top 10. Like, I know myself. And I'm constantly telling people I am what a lawyer looks like. So we're gonna talk about Meg Thee Stallion. We're gonna talk about Cardi B. And then we're gonna write an office action response to overcome a refusal. So we can show up authentically in both ways. They're not one or the other. We don't have to vacillate. We just have to be.
Ricky, I have one question for you.
Please.
You share your stories with your clients. Since starting to do this, have there been any unintended benefits that you never thought you'd receive from them? Little hidden benefits that have just popped out of nowhere.
Oh my gosh. Well, word of mouth is really, really big, but my clients making me cry. I think that's been a benefit. I had one client who at the time that she was starting her business, she was dealing with just pervasive discrimination in her workplace, just pervasive. And because we're Flat Fleet, we have an opportunity to just listen to clients and talk with them without having them incur a significant legal bill. So about a year after she became registered or had her federal trademark registered, she reaches out to me and is like bawling and just saying, you were the one that like just brought me through. And I'm like, hi, child. And she essentially said, like, you just encouraged me. You told me that I can keep on going. And she was actually an attorney as well, you know, which makes it really interesting. And just like, there's a really cool dynamic to that. But I think it's the moment where, you know, they tell me how much my firm and my team and I impacted them even outside of the legal work, which is what I've always wanted to do. And it reminds me of that like precocious 5-year-old who like heard about Brown versus Board of Education and was like, I want to do that one day. So I think that's what surprises me when they say like, not even that you're more than a lawyer, that this is what a lawyer looks like. And this is what a lawyer can look like. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. It's more than the work, right?
It is the
goes
work.
Beyond. Yeah. Thank you so much for today's session. Incredible, amazing insights, lots of takeaways, a few tears in here too. So thank you so much, Rookie.
Thank you.